I've always been the kind of person who enjoys her own company. My name is Mariana, I'm 22, and quiet has always been my comfort zone. That's why when I moved into an apartment with 2 roommates, I knew I'd need to set some boundaries early. Rachel and Juliana seemed friendly enough at first, both around my age, easy to talk to, but we were very different. While they loved having people over, watching loud shows together, and leaving doors open, I was the type who needed space and silence. From the beginning, I made it clear that my room was my sanctuary. I always kept the door closed, sometimes even when I was home. Not locked, just closed. It wasn't about secrecy, it was about having somewhere that was just mine. Rachel used to joke about it, calling me a little cave troll or saying things like, "Don't forget to come out for air." I laughed it off. I didn't want to cause waves. Juliana mostly stayed out of it, playing the neutral roommate. For the first few weeks, it was manageable. We split bills fairly, divided chores, and kept to our own routines. I even started to think that maybe living with others wouldn't be so bad after all. But that sense of peace didn't last. It started small. Little things in my room weren't where I left them. A book I was reading moved from my nightstand to the desk. A bottle of moisturizer lower than it should have been. I questioned myself at first, thinking maybe I'd been forgetful. But the unease started growing. Then one afternoon, I came back and found one of my hairbrushes sitting on the bathroom counter, wet, full of long blonde hair. Rachel's hair. I have dark curls. That was the moment the doubt faded. I wasn't being paranoid. Someone had been in my room. And suddenly, my closed door didn't feel like protection anymore. It felt like a flimsy suggestion no one respected. I tried to keep calm. Maybe it was just a one-time thing, I told myself. Maybe Rachel had needed a brush and didn't think it would matter. Still, it nagged at me. I decided to casually bring it up the next day while we were both in the kitchen. I asked if she'd used my hairbrush. She blinked, then laughed like I'd accused her of stealing my diary. "Why would I use your brush?" "That's gross," she said, flipping her long hair over her shoulder. I stared at her, knowing exactly what I saw the day before. "Well, someone did. It was wet and full of your hair." She rolled her eyes. "Okay, maybe I did. I didn't think you'd care. It's just a brush." That was the first time I felt the heat of real anger. It wasn't about the brush. It was the lie, the brushing off, the lack of basic respect. I told her I preferred if people didn't take my things without asking. She gave me this look like I was being dramatic. "Jesus, Mariana, you act like I robbed you or something." From that point on, it got worse. Rachel stopped even pretending to respect my space. I'd find my lotion half used, my favorite mug sitting in the sink with tea stains, even my hoodie once tossed over the back of the couch. I kept confronting her calmly at first. Every time, she'd act confused or annoyed. Once, she even laughed and said, "Wow, you really are territorial, huh?" Juliana stayed out of it, always too tired or not wanting to get in the middle. And so I felt increasingly alone in my own apartment, with no real backup, no real way to enforce boundaries that kept getting stomped over. I started keeping inventory of my things. I took photos of my room before leaving for work, not out of paranoia, but because it was the only way I could prove to myself that I wasn't imagining this. I was being disrespected. I just didn't know yet how far it would go. After weeks of subtle violations and Rachel's casual disrespect, I reached a breaking point. One evening, I came home to find my perfume bottle nearly empty. It had been full 2 days earlier. I knew I hadn't used it. The worst part? Rachel was getting ready in the bathroom, wearing my hoodie and smelling exactly like my perfume. I didn't say anything that time. I just turned around, walked into my room, and closed the door slowly behind me. That night, I stared at the ceiling for hours, turning over every conversation, every eye roll, every smug smile Rachel gave me when I called her out. I was exhausted. I didn't feel safe. And more than anything, I felt powerless. The next morning, I called our landlord. I explained everything. Well, not the drama, just the basics. I asked if I could install a simple lock on my bedroom door. Nothing major, just something I could control. He was surprisingly understanding. He told me it was fine as long as it didn't damage the frame or the door itself. I thanked him and went out that same afternoon to buy a keypad lock from the hardware store. It took me about an hour to install. The sound of the screwdriver turning screws into place felt weirdly satisfying. When I finished and clicked the lock for the first time, I stood there just staring at it. That little beep as it engaged gave me a feeling I hadn't had in weeks: control. Rachel noticed the lock that same night. She made a face when she walked past my door. "What's this about? You building a panic room or something?" I didn't respond. I didn't owe her an explanation. Juliana noticed too, but said nothing. Over the next few days, I finally felt a bit of relief. I could go to work without worrying. I could sleep knowing no one would rummage through my things. It felt like I was finally regaining a sense of peace in my own home. But that illusion didn't last long. It was a Thursday, one of those long, draining work days where all I wanted was to come home, take a shower, and curl up in bed. I walked into the apartment, tossed my keys in the bowl near the entrance, and headed toward my room. That's when I froze. The door to my bedroom was wide open. My heart dropped. I knew I had locked it that morning. My fingers trembled as I reached for the doorknob and stepped inside. The room looked wrong, off. The desk was slightly pushed, the chair tilted. The blanket on my bed, usually folded neatly, was tossed aside like someone had sat or laid on it. I ran to my desk. My laptop was gone. So was my Nintendo Switch. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. I stood there in complete silence, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I looked under the bed, behind the desk, even opened the drawers in case I'd moved them and forgotten. But no, they were gone. The lock on my door wasn't broken, just unlocked. Panic turned into rage. I grabbed my phone and called Rachel. She picked up after a few rings. Her voice was casual. "Hey, what's up? Were you in my room?" "What? No, why?" "My door was open when I got home. My laptop and Switch are gone." There was a pause. Then she said, "Wait, what? Are you serious? That's crazy." But something in her voice. It wasn't concern, it was defensive. Like she already knew where this was going. "I locked my door, Rachel." "Well, maybe you didn't lock it properly." I hung up and called Juliana next. She sounded more genuinely surprised, even worried. But she didn't offer any help. Just asked, "Do you think someone broke in?" I checked the windows. Nothing. Everything else in the apartment was untouched. No signs of a break-in. Which meant only one thing. Someone had opened that door on purpose. Someone with the nerve to invade my privacy and walk out with hundreds of dollars worth of my stuff. And I had a very strong feeling I knew exactly who it was. I paced in my room for a good 20 minutes, trying to calm myself down, trying to think straight. I didn't want to accuse anyone without proof, but everything pointed in one direction. The lock hadn't been tampered with. The rest of the apartment was untouched. Only my room, only my belongings, had been disturbed. I messaged our group chat. "Hey, someone went into my room and took my laptop and Switch. The door was locked when I left. Does anyone know anything about this?" Juliana replied first. "OMG, what? That's insane. Are you sure you locked it?" Rachel was quiet. Nothing, not for almost an hour. Then finally she sent, "Just saw this. That's crazy. Maybe call the landlord or something?" It was the most generic, empty response imaginable. And that silence before she replied, it didn't sit right with me. I decided to confront her directly. I knocked on her door. She opened it slowly, eyebrows raised. "Did you take my laptop?" I asked, looking her straight in the eye. She scoffed. "Seriously? Why would I take your stuff?" "Because my door was locked, and because this isn't the first time you've gone into my room." Her expression changed slightly. tightened. You're being paranoid. No, I'm not. I want my things back. There was a long silence. Then, almost with a shrug, she said, Okay, yeah, I borrowed them, but only for a few days. I was going to give them back. You're making it a huge deal. My jaw dropped. Borrow? She had the audacity to say she borrowed them? You broke into my room. You stole my electronics. That's not borrowing. She crossed her arms. I didn't steal anything. They're still here, aren't they? Where are they? She hesitated. The laptop's in my closet. I didn't touch anything, okay? And the switch? She blinked. What switch? At that point, something snapped in me. She wasn't just disrespecting my space. She was gaslighting me, treating me like I was crazy for caring that she took hundreds of dollars of my property without a word. She looked me in the eye and pretended the switch didn't exist. That was the moment I realized I couldn't handle this on my own anymore. I stepped back from Rachel's door, biting the inside of my cheek to keep from yelling. My head was spinning. She had admitted to taking my laptop, just like that. No apology, no guilt. Just a half-hearted excuse and a lie about the switch. I went back to my room and sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the empty space where my things used to be. A few minutes later, Rachel came into the hallway holding my laptop in both hands like she was returning a borrowed book. She placed it on the kitchen counter and called out, There, happy now? I walked over and picked it up. It looked fine on the outside, but I'd still have to check if anything had been messed with. I asked again, calmly this time, Where's my switch? She rolled her eyes. I told you, I didn't know you even had one. You're lying. Rachel raised her voice. Why would I lie? Jesus, Mariana, do you hear yourself? Juliana came out of her room then, finally looking like she realized how serious this had become. Wait, what's going on? She took my laptop, I said, not taking my eyes off Rachel. And my switch is still missing. Rachel barked out a laugh. This is insane. I didn't take anything else. You're just trying to make me look bad. I don't need to try. You broke into my room. Juliana looked between us, stunned. You actually took her laptop? Rachel turned to her, exasperated. Oh my God, it's not that deep. I borrowed it. It's not like she's ever using it when she's not home. I felt the rage rise in my chest. You don't get to decide when my things are available, Rachel. You're not entitled to my stuff. She shook her head and walked away, muttering, You're so dramatic. That word again, dramatic. I stood there shaking. This wasn't about a misunderstanding. This wasn't about boundaries. This was theft. This was a complete disregard for who I was and what I'd asked for over and over again. And if Rachel wasn't going to take responsibility, I knew who would have to make her. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my bed with my laptop in front of me, screen on, but my eyes unfocused. I kept replaying everything in my head. Rachel's smug face, her voice, the way she had the nerve to call me dramatic after stealing from me. And still no sign of my switch. Still pretending she didn't even know I had one. It wasn't just about the devices anymore. It was about principle. It was about feeling unsafe in my own home. I had taken every non-confrontational route possible. I had asked, reasoned, warned, even installed a lock. And Rachel still found a way to violate every boundary I'd put up. So, I did what I felt was my last option. I called the police. My voice trembled slightly as I explained the situation over the phone, but the dispatcher took me seriously. Within half an hour, 2 officers knocked on our door. Rachel's face went pale when she opened it. They asked to speak to both of us. I explained everything about the unauthorized entry, the items taken, the history of disrespect, and the unresolved disappearance of the Nintendo Switch. I showed them the door lock, the photos I'd taken of my room, even the group messages. They nodded, took notes, and then turned to Rachel. She tried to spin it, said she thought we were cool enough that it wasn't a big deal, that she was borrowing it, that I wasn't using it anyway. One of the officers cut her off and said flatly, "You can't take something from someone's locked room. That's not borrowing. That's unlawful entry and theft." Rachel's attitude shifted then. Her mouth opened, closed, then she crossed her arms, muttering that she didn't want any more drama. The police told her to return everything immediately and warned that this could have gone much differently if I'd pressed charges. She brought the laptop back again, like it hadn't already been returned, and then repeated the lie. I honestly didn't know she had a switch. I almost laughed. She had lied to my face, then lied to the police. And yet, even with the police involved, one of my things was still missing. The apartment felt like a pressure cooker after the police left. Rachel slammed her bedroom door and didn't come out for hours. Juliana stayed holed up in her room too, probably hoping the whole situation would just resolve itself without her having to get involved. Meanwhile, I sat in my room, staring at the spot on my desk where my switch used to be. I searched again, top to bottom, just to be sure. I pulled open every drawer, lifted my mattress, checked under the bed, inside the closet. Nothing. It was gone. Later that night, I knocked on Rachel's door one more time. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just drained. "Rachel," I said, voice low, "I'm asking one last time. Did you take the switch?" She opened the door halfway and leaned against the frame, arms crossed. "I already told the cops. I didn't even know you had one." I stared at her. "You used to ask me why I never played it in the living room. You said I was selfish for hiding fun stuff. Don't act like you forgot." She blinked slowly, lips pressed together. "I don't remember that. I didn't bother arguing anymore. If it turns up, leave it on my desk." She rolled her eyes and closed the door without another word. Over the next few days, nothing happened. No switch, no apology, no acknowledgement. The tension in the apartment was unbearable. Every time I walked into the kitchen and Rachel was there, she'd go quiet or pretend I didn't exist. Juliana started avoiding common areas altogether. I filed a report for the missing item, but without direct proof or witnesses, there wasn't much the police could do beyond the warning they'd already given. I knew in my gut Rachel had it, or knew where it was, but proving it was another story. I'd gotten my laptop back, sure, but that wasn't the point anymore. The line had been crossed and burned. The lock on my door now felt more like a wall between me and the people I lived with than protection. And somehow, despite everything she'd done, Rachel still acted like I was the problem. When the dust settled, I did what anyone would do. I talked to my friends. I needed someone to validate what I was feeling, to tell me I wasn't crazy for being this upset. So I called Clara, my best friend since high school, and vented the whole story. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Honestly, I don't blame you. That's insane. She literally broke into your room." That helped, for a while. But not everyone reacted the same way. Later that week, I was out with a few coworkers for drinks, and the topic came up. I didn't go into every detail, just said I had a roommate who took my laptop without asking, and that I ended up calling the police. One of them, Lucas, raised an eyebrow. "You called the cops on a roommate? That's kinda intense." Another chimed in, "Couldn't you have just handled it privately? I mean, it's not like she stole your car or something." I felt a flush crawl up my neck. She broke into my room, took my stuff, lied about it. What was I supposed to do? Wait for her to pawn it before taking it seriously? They shrugged. No one said I was wrong exactly, but there was judgment in their faces. Like I'd escalated things too far. Like I'd made everyone uncomfortable by refusing to just let it go. Even online, when I posted anonymously for advice, the replies were mixed. Some people were on my side. Others said I was dramatic, that calling the police on a roommate could ruin their life over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. That word haunted me. I'd been clear. I'd been patient. I'd been disrespected, ignored, and lied to. But now, because I had finally stood up for myself, I was the one being questioned. It started messing with my head. Had I gone too far? Was I wrong for not just accepting the apology that never even came? The worst part? I wasn't even sure anymore. The apartment isn't a home anymore. It's just a space I exist in, quietly, avoiding eye contact in shared spaces. Rachel barely acknowledges me. Juliana tiptoes around both of us like we're about to explode. The silence is louder than any fight we've had. And I'm tired. Tired of tiptoeing. Tired of second-guessing. Tired of being made to feel like I overreacted when all I ever wanted was respect. My bedroom door now stays locked every time I leave, even just to go to the kitchen. I've taken to carrying my laptop with me in my backpack. I've practically built a fortress around myself inside the one place that should have felt safe. But the thing is, I didn't want a war. I wanted peace. I wanted boundaries. I wanted to live with people who understood that privacy isn't a personality quirk. It's a basic right. I've been asking myself the same question every day since I made that call. Was I too harsh? Was it really necessary to involve the police? I mean, yes, she broke into my locked room. Yes, she took expensive items. Yes, she lied to my face and never once apologized. But still, part of me wonders if I escalated it beyond reason. What if it had been the other way around? What if she'd just been careless, thoughtless, and I overinterpreted it as malicious? But then I remember the smirk on her face when she handed back my laptop, the way she downplayed everything, the way she never once showed any remorse. And I know, I had to draw the line somewhere. I had to show that my space, my belongings, my boundaries aren't optional. So here I am, still shaken, still uncertain, still living under the same roof as the person who made me feel like a stranger in my own life. But I need to ask, was I the asshole for calling the police on my roommate after she broke into my room and took my things? Or was it the only way to finally be taken seriously?